The paintwork of the body of this model is of good quality, thanks to which it endures the daily hardships of operation. However, due to the angular shape of the body, there are still a couple of problem areas here. The most susceptible to damage are the hood, rear arches and the bevel of the lower part of the doors, which often gets from the stove line from under the wheels. Significant damage to the paintwork can also be in the doorways of the body. Most often, the paint is rubbered to the metal of the threshold and in places of contact with thills. Thins are not bad with the corrosion resistance of body iron, however, it cannot be said that the body does not rust at all. The hood, trunk lid and doors surrender most quickly under the onslaught of the red disease, so it is not worth delaying with the elimination of damage to the paintwork of these elements. When examining older cars, special attention should be paid to the seams on the bottom and in the threshold area. They corrode over the years without proper care. There are complaints about the sterate of attachments. So, for example, the plastic from which the bumpers are made is quite fragile and easily cracks when in contact with snow drifts. The cost of buying a new part is high, so the owners resort to a collective farm soldering to repair damage. You also need to be careful when opening the hood, as an awkward movement can damage the radiator grille, which is part of the hood. The windshield does not differ in resistance to external factors. This trouble is exacerbated by the features of aerodynamics and design. There are also complaints about the front optics. In addition to the rigid wear of the protective plastic, it rubs off, becomes cloudy, the owners note the short lamp life. You can also highlight the unreliability of the tail light seals. If the tightness is lost, moisture will accumulate inside the lantern. For cars that spend the night outside after rains, moisture can also accumulate in the recess of the cup of the left A-pillar. This trouble leads to rust of the top of the shock absorber rod and its nut. Often, owners of pre-styling cars complain about problems with opening door locks. They fail the central locking drive. The locks themselves do not differ in reliability, especially often it is necessary to change the lock of the trunk lid. It lasts 2-3 years. On the common problems of these units, it is worth noting the small resource of the front engine mount, starter bendix, fuel pump and thermostat flowing. All internal combustion engines, except for 1.3, are equipped with a timing belt drive, which, according to the regulations, must be serviced every 120,000 kilometers. However, experienced owners say that it is better to do this more often, since the belt often does not withstand even 100,000 kilometers. It needs to be changed every 80,000 kilometers. At the same time as the belt, it is recommended to change the pump. But the chain used in the A9JA engine can do withstand replacing 200-250,000 kilometers. All engines are sensitive to the quality of gasoline. With the regular use of bad or low-octane fuel, you will have to change the spark plugs and ignition coils, filter and fuel pump more often than usual. For the same reason, the catalyst is rented ahead of time, the replacement of which is not cheap. They are part of the exhaust manifold. Motors 1.2, 1.4 and 1.6 lack hydraulic compensators, therefore, once every 100,000 kilometers it is necessary to adjust the thermal clearances of the valves. But the 1.3 engine has hydraulic compensators, which is why it is more sensitive to the quality of the oil and its change intervals. The life of the compensators depends on the quality of the lubricant. Another disadvantage of the A9JA engine is the breakdown of candles and caps of high-voltage wires, increased noise and difficulty starting in cold weather. The FXJA and FYDA motors have an unfortunate design of the air filter, which is why it needs to be changed as often as possible, otherwise dirt will enter the throttle. When replacing the filter, be sure to check that the filter compartment cover is correctly installed. The cooling system can also be attributed to the vulnerabilities of this internal combustion engine. The pipes and the radiator do not differ in reliability. The wiring connectors of the engine compartment are also considered problematic, which painfully endure meeting with the raw dirt. The diesel engine was developed by the French company Peugeot by order of Ford and the PSA concern. This engine is more problematic than gasoline engines and begins to bother with significant drawbacks after 100,000 kilometers. The fuel equipment fails, the pistons wears out, as a result an oil burner appears, and the turbine is completely considered consumable. In addition, this ICE is prone to lubrication leaks, especially from the air dispenser. Often, owners of diesel Ford Fusion also face such troubles as burnout of sealant washers under the nozzles, contamination of the USR valve, camshaft exhaust and premature chain stretching. Another weighty argument to refuse such a car is the fact that they were not officially delivered to us, but were brought in by car businessmen and impressive mileage. 3 types of gearboxes were available for Ford Fusion: 5-speed manual, 4-speed Aisin AW8040 assault rifle and DuraShift EST robot. The mechanics are devoid of significant ailments. Among the shortcomings, one can only single out the tendency of the drive to loosen up and the short service life of the dual-mass flywheel used in cars with a diesel engine. A clutch kit with the release bearings with careful operation is enough for 120–150,000 kilometers. A little earlier, the clutch master cylinder rod needs to be replaced. The malfunction is manifested by clicks when you press the clutch pedal. The axle drive seals need to be replaced every 60–80,000 kilometers. Early enough, the gear selection mechanism may also require attention. Difficulties appear with the inclusion of 3, 4, 5 and reverse gears. Cleaning and lubrication of the mechanism is required. After 100,000 km, the oil seals of the gear selection mechanism begin to flow. The automatic transmission is also reliable, which can be killed ahead of time only by untimely maintenance and regular overheating. With the rare oil change, friction wear products will reduce the performance of solenoids and valve body channels. As a result, the box will experience oil starvation, which will lead to rapid wear of moving parts. But a robotic transmission, although it is essentially a copy of mechanics, can drink a lot of blood in the first 100,000 km. Most often, the malfunction of the robot is caused by the presence of problems with the electrical wiring. For this reason, communication between the control module and actuators may be lost. Often requires attention and clutch, which painfully endures work it toughest overheats. To extend the life of the clutch, servicemen recommend engaging neutral gear when stopping. The actuators of the robot need to be replaced after 5 or 6 years of operation or after bathing. They begin to wedge. Another disadvantage of the robot is its sluggishness and the high cost of repairs, up to $1,500. The suspension architecture here is exactly the same as that of the Fiesta SO platform, in front of the McPherson strut with a stabilizer bar, behind a beam. The chassis is generally reliable. The only thing for Fusion owners blame is the short life of the stabilizer consumables and the original rear shock absorbers, 40–70,000 km resource. Also, the outboard shaft bearing can be attributed to problem areas, poorly protected from water and dirt. Front shock absorbers, as a rule, withstand about 100,000 km. Wheel bearings are about the same. The remaining parts of the front axle serve 100–150,000 km. The rear suspension is essentially indestructible. The only thing that can bother in the anthers and bumpers of the rear shock absorbers, but if the car is not heavily loaded, they do this infrequently. The silent blocks of the beam can withstand up to 300,000 km of run under moderate loads. Of the operational shortcomings, it is worth highlighting the excessive shiftiness of the suspension and the tendency to build up at high speeds. The steering is endowed with a rack and a pinion mechanism with proper steering. The resource of the rail, depending on the operating conditions, is 100–150,000 km. The bushings break. The power steering pump can withstand about the same amount. But high-pressure pipes can bother with fluid leaks at a relatively short mileage, 50–100,000 km. Steering consumables also have an acceptable service life. Steering tips 80–100,000 km, thrust up to 150,000 km. The brakes are reliable. The only thing that can start bothering over time is the ABS unit and the handbrake cable. On older cars, you need to monitor the hoses of the system, covers with cracks. Interior finishing materials are quite budgetary and if handled carelessly, quickly wears out. In addition, the low cost of finishing negatively affects the acoustic comfort of the car. Hard plastic fills the interior with quicks and knocks over the years. Also, the mechanism for attaching the back of the rear seats and their head restraints can also bother with extraneous sounds. In addition, the owners know that the head restraints of the second row of seats, when lowered, rest against the backs of passengers, and when raised, they block the view. In machines older than 10 years, actuators often fail: handles, buttons, drive cables, and similar trifles. When buying a Ford Fusion in the secondary market, pay attention to the condition of the finish, as it can tell a lot about the mileage and operating conditions of the car. So, for example, in cars with low city mileage, the interior will look like new. High mileage is given out by significant abrasions in the opening, dust in the plastic and sagging seats. There are also a few problems with interior equipment. The main ones are the feature of the limit switches, the central lock, the heater fan, and the connectors of various switches. With frequent use of heating elements, exterior mirrors are enough for 60–80,000 km. Freon leaks appear in cars equipped with air conditioning after 6–8 years of operation. Replacement of tubes is required. Pedal switches are also prone to failures, contacts burn out. You can also highlight the unreliability of the generator, which needs to be repaired every 4 or 5 years. When choosing a Ford Fusion in the secondary market, it is better to immediately look at options for good equipment, since the installation of freelance equipment, multimedia, power windows, etc. often leads to the appearance of different kind of electronic failure. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.